The Chicago Bulls lost their preseason game yesterday against the Denver Nuggets, but there were some promising things from both Coby White and Patrick Williams to pull away from that game. So we're going to talk about that. Plus, we're going to ask the question, is it time to be more concerned for Dalen Terry, even though I know you guys have been concerned for him for a while, and Zach LaVine comments on how a healthy offseason is going to help him start this season. We're going to talk about all that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host here, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into the content for today, right? So the Chicago Bulls had their game yesterday against the Denver Nuggets, right? And so we want to talk about things. Again, I want to keep throwing out the caveat that everything that we talk about is with that caveat that it is only preseason. Now, in this game, though, the Denver Nuggets played their starters, right? And for what it's worth, when the players that were mainly in that rotation, that are going to be in the Bulls rotation, the Bulls played them pretty solidly, right? Overall, again, I'm not going to say here like they outplayed them or anything in any stretch, because they shouldn't, right? A starting five of Coby White, Andre Drummond, Patrick Williams, Torrey Craig, and Ayo Dosunmu should in no way outplay a starting five of players, for the most part, that were just on a championship team. Yes, they were missing Michael Porter Jr., but other than that, it's pretty much their starting five, right? So don't want to overstate that at all. But Coby White and Patrick Williams showed why they can help support this core three in a big way, right? When you look at Coby White's game, 6 for 11 in this game, 3 assists, 1 rebound, 20 points in this, no turnovers from Coby White in this game, right? And then you saw as the game went on, Coby White learning to pick his spots, right? Understanding that he can take a player off the dribble, use his step back in that mid-range to get a shot off. He was also 3 of 7 from the three-point line, right? So also, getting the threes and shooting those pretty well. At times, over the course of his, first few seasons in the NBA, there have been times where Coby White has had an open three, and you weren't always able to rely heavily on the fact that it was going to go in. In this game, for the most part, all the threes that were open, he hit, and even some that were contested, he still hit. Coby White has continued showing the growth, and I know a lot of Bulls fans are still looking at Jevon Carter, who is still, he was really good in this game as well. That transition three from Jevon Carter is going to be a weapon this year. He was 3 of 10 from the field, but 3 of 5 from three-point range was Jevon Carter for 9 points in this game, and that's also kind of what you want to see from him. That's going to be his role, regardless of starting or coming off the bench. But also Patrick Williams in this game. Patrick Williams shows and continues to show, as I've always pointed out, when he's a featured part of the offense, he's pretty solid. Now, everything was not perfect, and I'm not going to paint it as it was perfect. He had 10 points in the first quarter, 2 in the second quarter. He goes on to score 20 points, 8 of 14 overall, 3 of 5 from three-point range, 2 rebounds, 1 assist in this game, 1 turnover as well. Now, the signs of concern for P. Will. We're gonna talk about some of the good, some of the bad, right? The signs for concern with P. Will is that I still haven't seen P. Will take a player off the dribble yet, and I would like to see him get to the rim a little bit more. Force getting to the free throw line. He was only to the free throw line twice in this game, but those are things that with Patrick Williams' size, I think he can do really well. Also, the facilitating, only 1 assist in this game, even though he did pass out in the right moments. It didn't lead to assists for him, but he did make some of the right decisions. You got to watch the game to really see that and understand that. But really, the part of Patrick Williams' game, we've seen a little bit of it throughout his career, right? Throughout different times in his career. But I really want to see P. Will make a concerted effort to get to the rim a little bit more consistently than what he showed so far. But otherwise, right, 5 of Patrick Williams' first 14 shots came in mid-range, right? And so 4 of those came at the rim. Again, want to see him get to the rim a little bit more, right? It's not a bad thing. Not a bad thing at all. But listen, at the end of the day, Patrick Williams shot 57% from the field. He's not always going to do that. And that's why I want to see him add that part to his game of getting to the rim, so he can get higher efficiency shots or get to the free throw line and draw fouls a little bit more. But other than that, listen, Patrick Williams in a scoring role, we've seen it before. He is really, really good at it. That's not going to be his role day in and day out. But why it's promising that him and Coby White both had 20 points in this game is because when defenses start zeroing in on DeMar, right, packing in the lane, or on Zach, or Zach's having a cold night, whatever it is, we're seeing that Coby White and Patrick Williams have the ability to kick it into another gear, which this team is going to need. What did we talk about right early in the offseason? Patrick Williams understanding how to be more of a gap filler for this Chicago Bulls team, meaning filling the gaps that are between the core three players, and that is Patrick Williams' role on this team as of right now. But listen, this is a game that definitely shows, like I said, we had one game of aggressive P. Will. The second game was passive P, and P. Will right back to being aggressive and consistent in the role of being thrust into being needed as a big scoring role for this team. So listen, it's the potential is there for Patrick Williams. I know a lot of people try to make him this or trying to paint him out to be a bust or whatever it is because he's not living up to their expectations of a number 4 overall pick, but he hasn't had the typical role of a number 4 overall pick either. But when you see things like this again, this was their starting unit, right? It wasn't like he was just doing this against bench warmers or some of the times like where we see Patrick Williams go off in the last game of the season where a team isn't playing, their best players. P. Will played extremely well in this game. He didn't play perfect, but he played extremely well in this game. One of the signs for concern with P. Will as well, 7 rebounds over 3 preseason games. We need him to tighten that up a little bit, right? Again, this is to talk about everything fairly. It's not to unjustly judge him based off that, but you're a power forward in the NBA. You need to rebound the ball a little bit more, and I think going after those rebounds, specifically offensive rebounds as well, is going to help P. Will get to the free throw line, take care of mismatches, things like that. But overall, solid nights from P. Will and Ayo Dosunmu. And Coby White. Ayo Dosunmu was the next player I'm going to talk about. Listen, Ayo is starting to understand what his role is going to be on this Chicago Bulls team. And for that, it's much more similar to what it was when his rookie season started off, when Lonzo Ball was out there, right? We're seeing a Ayo Dosunmu that's getting to the spots that he needs to get to, that's playing with the energy that he needs to get to. There was a time where he had Jokic mismatched on him, and I was worried, and Ayo confidently took it to the rim. We didn't see a situation in which Ayo missed layups, right? He didn't miss the bunnies, the gimmies. This was Ayo Dosunmu that I look at and say, yeah, he was starting in this game. That's not going to be his role, right? But he was starting in this game, playing 31 minutes, gets 12.7 assists, 4 rebounds. That is the type of production you want from a player that is now a role player for this team, right? No longer a starting point guard on this team. And that's fine. He has to understand how to go about get his, and that's another thing that I appreciate, and I want to make sure that I give props to Ayo Dosunmu and how he's coming along, right? So we talked about Ayo, we talked about Coby, talked about P. Will, a little bit about Javon Carter, and we also got to talk about Torrey Craig. Torrey Craig, while not on the stat sheet, you really have to watch the game. It's just amazing to see how Torrey Craig always understands how to be in the right situation and position. And he's going to be a really big player for the Chicago Bulls this upcoming season. Julian Phillips played well, also without scoring. He had a highlight reel block in this game as well. But yeah, I really like a lot of what we saw in this game. And listen, I said it over on a live post-game show. Billy Donovan has coached 3 really good preseason games. Yeah, we were 1-2, right? We didn't get wins, but that's not what I'm necessarily looking to take away from preseason. I'm looking at the game plan. I'm looking at how you get players involved. And it's been a solid game plan from Billy Donovan. Is he still the coach that I would want to see on the Chicago Bulls team? No. But listen, I got to acknowledge it as well that this coaching staff has had these Bulls players prepared. Listen, and the things are evolving. So that's what I like to see from this team. But moving on from that, one of the players that sat yesterday was Zach LaVine. And Zach LaVine had a comment as far as health and how this offseason was different for him. He said this: I'm in shape. I'm not rehabbing. So you're not second guessing things. I feel like myself, like I did from December on. I had a full offseason. It's always good to come into camp in shape and not have any extra ailments. Now, when Zach LaVine talks about how he played since December, right? I want to quantify that. So from the start of the season until December 2nd, Zach LaVine played 18 games. He averaged 20 points per game, 20.9 points per game on 40% shooting from the field, 35% from three-point range, right? And solid, right? He had a plus minus of negative 2.8 per game. So the teams were the Bulls were being outscored by 2.8 points when he was on the court. The difference is 59 games played after December 2nd for Zach LaVine. He averaged 26 points per game on 50% shooting from the field, 38% shooting from three-point range, 4.5 rebounds, and a plus minus of plus 1.2. Zach LaVine balled out after he got fully healthy, and that is the expectation for Zach LaVine coming into this season. Now that you're fully healthy, you have no ailments, as you said, that's the Zach LaVine we need this season to start it off, right? Like we saw in that second Denver game, right? Zach LaVine understanding, picking his spots, being a little bit more methodical. That's the Zach LaVine we need for this Bulls team, saying this as well. We're still trying to play and figure out where we're going to get our shots within the offense. We're going to just mess around with the lineups throughout this preseason, see what works, what doesn't. That is what preseason is for, especially when you're trying to change and evolve your offense. And Zach LaVine has to be a big part of that evolution with him playing more intelligently, right? But Zach LaVine's basketball IQ has always been something that's been questioned by fans that both watch the game and fans that watch the box score. But at the end of the day, a Zach LaVine that is fully healthy, that is understanding how to pick his spots, that is operating within the flow of the offense, trying to get other players involved, which we've also seen at the second half of last season and so far in preseason. That's when Zach LaVine can be at his most dangerous. Yes, he needs support from that supporting cast, right? Moving without the ball, moving the ball around. Those are all things that help Zach LaVine and the other players' game on this team, and we need to see that consistently. Will we, right? So often with this team, we hear them say the right things, and while we've seen the right things so far in preseason, it is preseason, and we got to see that in the regular season, which is 8 days away. We are 8 days away from Chicago Bulls basketball, and I, for one, am excited. I know you guys probably are too. We got to continually bring that around, and so hopefully we see that from this team. Hopefully a fully healthy Zach LaVine. And when you see like the way that Coby and Patrick Williams are stepping up, right? Hopefully Vooch as well can be what he was last year, which is 18 and 11 basically. All that is going to help this team take that next step up and maybe even avoid the play-in. It's not going to be easy, right? They're not going to be favored. Most places and outlets have the Bears, God forbid that, have the Bulls finishing either 11th or 12th in the Eastern Conference. And I think this is going to be a team that really surprises some people with how the sum of the parts come together to make this a much better team this season. Let's hope I'm right. We'll see. But like I said, a healthy Zach LaVine this season is going to be huge for the Chicago Bulls. Now, talked about Zach. We talked about the preseason. We got to talk about one of the things that were concerning from this preseason so far, and that is Dalen Terry. Now, I've seen you guys go in the comments. A lot of people saying, is Dalen Terry even an NBA player? And the question that seriously does have to be asked is this time to start being concerned about Dalen Terry? Now, we know we have a player development staff, right? We know that Dalen Terry least played 18th overall pick in NBA history, right? So those things play a part into it. But listen, Dalen Terry is still playing uncontrolled out there. He still can't hit a shot to save his life, right? While the energy is something that is infectious about Dalen Terry, it's uncontrolled energy. And I think that we won't really be able to see what Dalen is until he gets that under control, till he plays with more kind of understanding of what he needs to do rather than just running out there. We saw times and opportunities where he calculated on a pick and roll, which caught him out of position, right? He's not playing with any type of basketball IQ out there. Right now, Dalen Terry is going off energy and his athleticism, and that does not make for a good basketball player in of itself. You have to understand when and how to control that energy and that athleticism and add in a little basketball IQ, right? So, I know a lot of Bulls fans are starting to call Dalen Terry a bust and things like that. And here's what I'll say. A 19-year-old kid, what is he, 20 years old now? It's, for me, too early. You guys can do what you want, right? To me, it's too early to call a kid a bust that really hasn't had. We didn't have a player. He's 21 years old. I don't know why I still thought he was younger than that. 21 years old. He just turned 21 in July. But he has tons of work that he still needs to do, right? And if he's going to want to get on the court, I always say, like with Dalen Terry, the thing that could get him on the court is the defense. But if it's uncontrolled energy and unfocused, that defense ain't going to mean shit, right? A player like Julian Phillips is showing way more poise and kind of, you can see that Julian Phillips is understanding and learning game from game in the preseason. Dalen Terry has had a G League season. He has 2 summer leagues. And while that's not a huge sample size in of itself, right?
Hey, man, I wanted to chime in a little bit on the DeMar DeRozan extension talk that we had. You guys all had earlier in the week. It was very good. Interesting stuff. You guys have touched on it. No one nationally is talking about if DeMar wants to stay. Everybody's just assuming it's the Bulls' decision. We got to remember that DeMar is going to be 35 and has not won a championship and, might want to. And he's good enough to help a team. He's do that. So that's the first factor I think we should think about. That's how I frame this all. DeMar's a very good player. A 2-year deal would line him up with Vucci, and I think that would be what the Bulls would prefer to do, is some sort of 2-year deal. If he wants to stay, I'm not sure that it would make sense. Oh, I know it doesn't make sense. They can't max the guy. If they max the guy, I don't know what if they max him, I think they're just trying to treat their players right for the benefit of the rest of the league. But then you're paying a guy who's, going to be 38 and coming off by the end of his contract will be 38. He had an injury last year. These guys in their mid-30s, you know how it is. They get hurt, and it doesn't go away as fast. I think his leadership is a little bit overblown. I think the guys like him, but, if you're talking about he works out with Dalen Terry in the off season. Dalen Terry right now looks like a worse player, like a not an NBA player at all. That's a little overblown. Same with Patrick Williams. He's been working out with him for 2 summers, and preseason. I know it's preseason, but it's a little scary how little his mindset has changed. Based on the last game, where he does the flashes. So I don't know what they're going to do with DeMar. I think they want to sign him for 2 years at a higher value just to line up the timeline and to keep their cap space asset. But we'll see what he does. You know what I think. I don't think this team is going to be a championship contender as built. And I think they locked themselves into that status with Vucevic and the LaVine extensions. I think this is as good as they're going to be unless someone takes an unexpected leap. So I predict they're try to sign him to a 2-year deal. If I were him, I would look to go to sign and trade somewhere, like the Lakers or somewhere like that where he can, not ring chase. I said that once, but, get an opportunity to win at a very, very high level instead of, what we have here. I do like him. I'm trying not to be critical of him. I appreciate what he does. I just think this is where we're at. He's a good player. But he is old, coming off an injury-plagued season, and that's going to keep coming. So you can't do big bucks to him, but I think the rest of the stuff makes sense. Like line him up with Vucevic. That's what I predict they want to do. I'll see what they do. All right, bye.
He has to work on that, right? And hopefully this player development staff that AK spent money on to build this whole new department within the Chicago Bulls, it has to pay off. And one of the players that it has to pay off in is Dalen Terry, right? To see what you can get out of him. You passed on Walker Kessler to bring in Dalen Terry. Let's be clear here. Walker Kessler, you may have not needed to re-sign Nikola Vucevic this offseason. Probably still would have, right, because of the assets, things like that. But, you passed on Walker Kessler to get this kid in, a kid that has tons of raw potential. But until you start mining that potential, it means nothing in the long run. So we got to start seeing that from Dalen. They're absolutely. I can understand the concern around Dalen. Me personally, it's too early for me in my thoughts to go from a seldom played rookie into just his second NBA season to start calling him a bust yet. But those signs for concern are there with Dalen Terry, and I really do hope that he starts figuring it out sometime sooner rather than later. But all right, let's go ahead and get into. We got one voicemail I want to get into before we go today. This one is from Casual Kelder. All right, first I got to start with your casual takes, right? DeMar literally said this offseason he wants to retire as Chicago Bull. So this whole thing of you starting this off by asking, does DeMar even want to stay in Chicago? He literally answered that question. Now, one could say that it's posturing, but he didn't need to say that. His play and what he's been for the Chicago Bulls team speaks to it, right? So I tend to lean towards believing DeMar when he says that he wants to retire a Bull. Now, he doesn't want to do that just to take any deal, right? He still wants to get paid. This may be his last time for a lengthy contract or a contract at all, right? So I do think that DeMar wants to stay at Chicago Bulls. So that I got to nix that right from the bud on you on that one. DeMar literally said he wants to retire a Bull. But outside of that, the question that you asked, and I actually think is a reasonable question, is DeMar DeRozan's leadership overblown? And the reason why I think that that's a reasonable question, I see you guys in the comments so often people say, well, we got to keep DeMar around. He's mentoring the young guys. But those same young guys that people say that he's mentoring are the same young guys that people complain about, right? Like when you look at Ayo, a lot of Bulls fans complain about Ayo. I think Ayo may have a bounce back year this year. A lot of Bulls fans complain about Ayo. Dalen Terry. We all know that Bulls fans complain about Dalen Terry, right? Patrick Williams. We still got Bulls fans saying that the Bulls need to trade Patrick Williams and he's a bust, even though, he's a fourth, fifth option on the team and offensively, and they kind of just focus on offense when they talk about P. Will, right? But so it's funny to hear Bulls fans use the mentor aspect of this conversation, but then the players that he mentored, they also shit on those players, right? So regardless of DeMar's mentorship is overblown or not, I've said this for a couple of years now. The lessons that DeMar is teaching these young players in the work ethic, right? Things like that is something that is going to pay off for them for years and years, even after DeMar is gone. But the bigger question are those lessons starting to show on the court, right? And I think for a lot of the players here, you have those questions, right? You have the questions on if that's happening. So I do think that there is a conversation and an argument to be made on DeMar DeRozan's mentorship and leadership and how it's really like affecting the younger players. But here's the thing. All that aside, when you need a bucket, DeMar DeRozan is usually the guy to either get the bucket or get to the free throw line, help extend that game, help that game slow down. We don't have another player that does that. Zach does not get to the free throw line consistently. Coby doesn't get to the free throw line consistently, even though I think this year and seeing how he's using his speed off the dribble, be on the lookout for Coby White, maybe to average the most free throws he has in his career. Patrick Williams, I just talked about me and my desire to see him get to the free throw line a little bit more. So DeMar absolutely has a role on this team. Now, I think the money has to be right. Maxing him to me for the max years and money would be asinine. Now, if you're going to max him on the money, but over 2 years or whatever, 2+1, it's not as bad, right? That's more salvageable. But ultimately, I think it comes down to this, right? I think both sides want to get it done, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they agree on the number that it would take to get it done. And that's where the Chicago Bulls team and DeMar DeRozan may sit at a crossroads. Now, if the Bulls start off, keep in mind, you don't have a deadline on when you need to extend DeMar. So if the Bulls have success this season that they think they're going to have with the changes to their offense, and DeMar is playing well in that, maybe even facilitating more at times and taking over the game more at times, kind of picking those spots, but empowering players like Patrick Williams and Coby White and supporting them, then I think that extension gets done before the end of the season. If the Bulls still struggle, I think it may go until right up until free agency started, much like it did with Nikola Vucevic. But time will tell on that one. But thank you, Kelder, as always, for the voicemail. That's my time for today, guys. Make sure you guys are following the show at Bull Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. And then lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.